Welcome to my new podcast. It's called The Solar Journey. And for the show, I will invite people who are working in the solar industry, in the wind industry, or the energy industry in general. And I'm interested to find out what is their motivation, what is the motivation of these people, why they work in that industry, what kind of challenges are there, and what they think where the energy industry should move to, should be headed. And today, on my very first show, I'll have as my guest an old friend. It's Jens Schneider. He's a professor here at the university in Leipzig. He conducts research at the Center for Material Economics. It's called CEM, and this is part of the Fraunhofer Institute here in Leipzig, Germany, and he's been doing this since early 2020. And he works on energy system development. So precisely, he conducts research on how to manage the structural change in the coal regions, national and international. So the transformation of the energy system towards a sustainable approach. Previously, from 2014 to 2019, Jens was a foundation professor, and from 2019 he's an honorary professor at the HTWK. That's a university here in Leipzig of applied science. And before that, between 2011 and 2018, he was a group leader for solar module technology at another Fraunhofer Institute in Halle, also Germany. And from 2005 until 2011, he worked as a plant and process engineer at CSG Solar, a company founded by Professor Martin Green from the UNSW in Australia. And CSG Solar itself was then a subsidiary of Q-Cells, which is now operating under the name Hanwha Q-Cells, one of the top 10 solar cell manufacturers worldwide. Jens Schneider did his doctorate in the field of silicon thin film photovoltaics. And so Jens started as a researcher, PV specialist, and he was part of the big PV boom here in Germany. And then he moved into the field of economics and structural changes in the energy sector. So Jens, welcome to the show. Thanks for volunteering as my very first guest.
Hi, Torsten. Nice to see you.
Hi, Jens. Yeah, so these are special circumstances. We were planning to meet face to face and have a walk through Leipzig and have a chat about the solar energy. And now with the COVID-19, it is now the 31st of March 2020. We are limited to our homes. So this is why we run the show now via Zoom. Yeah, Zoom, I think they must be making now a nice jump in subscribers. Everybody's switching to video conferencing. So how does your workday look like? I meet you now at your office at home, I guess.
Yes, this is my home office. Welcome to my home office. Yeah, our whole family is home. My wife and the kids, and sometimes you can hear them in the back. I think I told them to be quiet for this interview, but I think it's hard to have the family quiet all the time, so we have to cope with these circumstances. But I must say that it actually works out quite all right. I do get things done, and I'm a bit surprised by that, but the kids behave nicely, and I'm maybe also surprised by that fact.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm besides doing podcasts, I'm the CEO of a metrology company in Germany, and it's all business now runs via video conferencing. It's pretty crazy how swiftly our day-to-day life has changed. And also at home with two kids. I'm actually now in our bedroom, and let's see how my kids behave today. Yeah, I would like to add that Jens and we met many years ago. I did some research last night. It must have been 2003 on our way to Osaka, Japan, to one of the PV photovoltaics world conferences, and we spent most of the flight back then in the back of the plane, drinking lots of red wine.
Until there was none anymore.
Until now, was
and anymore. Either way.
Either way, yeah. I mean, it was pretty insane, right? I mean, we were civil servants back then, a Ph.D. student myself, and so free booze was pretty cool. Anyhow, then we had to sit down, and maybe that was to the good of us. Yeah. So you were born. You were born in Karlsruhe. And now you're in Leipzig. You work in the solar industry. How did that all happen? Why did you go that direction?
Actually, there was one point in time where I decided to go into this field, and this was still back in school times. I read a Geo article, which is the German National Geographics, about Amaury and Hunter Lovins from Rocky Mountain Institute in Colorado in the US.
Yeah.
And they worked on the energy sustainability field, and they still do this today. It's quite amazing. And this was very inspiring to me. I thought, well, that's very interesting. That's something I can envision for myself as well.
Yeah.
Because it fitted all the requirements I had that I was thinking about what a job should do for me. It should be interesting and fun. It should be ethically something that I can support. It was clear that I was more of a technical person, so it was a technical topic and something where I thought this would have a big future. So I decided to go this way, and from the general energy topic, it moved towards photovoltaics fairly soon.
Yeah.
And so this journey took me via studying electrical engineering in Duisburg, where I was told that photovoltaics were not teaching this. The energy density is too low. This will never have any important role. Via Berlin and HMI, my Ph.D. in silicon thin film photovoltaics.
Yeah.
That to Q cells or CSG solar, and then Leipzig and Fraunhofer.
Yeah. Pretty cool. So what are you working on now as a professor at the Fraunhofer Institute?
So the lecture I still do at university deals with how to transform the energy system to keep our climate goals. So we have a model for Germany for electricity, for heating, for mobility, and for industrial processes and all the energy required. It's a fairly simple model. We have a reference model for Germany for 2015. And the students have the opportunity, so it's energy engineering students in their master program, and they have the opportunity to simulate for themselves how they can achieve climate goals for 2030 and 2050. And it's a huge task for them, and I think it's really important for them to get the big picture and to understand the quantities that we have to cope with. And I enjoy teaching this course, and I hope that some of the students enjoy it too.
All right. What do you like about teaching? So from a lab engineer to a teacher, what fascinates you about teaching?
So I've always been teaching. Even in school times, I've been assisting younger students with their homework and with their math courses and so forth. Yeah. And also at university, I earned some money on the side with teaching. And I once spoke to another friend about what motivates us in our work. And for me, it was always the big picture, doing the energy transformation system. But I was told from that friend that he's mostly motivated if he can improve people. If people come to him and seek advice, people working for him, and he can give them that advice, and he can feel that they've learned something and they have improved themselves. That's really, really satisfying for him. And I must say that I can share this this feeling, and I think it's a great opportunity to share what you've learned and discuss with people. And I especially like the approach where students can try to find out themselves what's good for them, and I don't really tell them, this is the way to go, but we can discuss these things and see how to move forward and quantify results. So that's really nice and interesting.
Yeah.
And I like young people. I have to say that maybe we get to this later again as well. With now the Fridays for Future movement, I really think young people today are very motivated, highly motivated in what they're doing, also in designing their future and caring about the future. And they have one big advantage as opposed to us. When you work 20 or 30 years in one field, whatever your viewpoint, you get a bit stuck in some opinions and you get a bit odd. And I have the feeling that young people don't have this as much. So they're very open for new points, and they can adapt much quicker and understand different positions.
Yeah.
So I really like working with young people and like teaching, and that's a lot of fun.
Do you get real feedback from your students, or is it a one-directional thing? Do they tell you, hey, this was really a cool course, or how do you? I mean, you give a lot of energy. Do you get energy back from the students somehow, or do you?
Definitely, I always use the last hour to discuss how the course went.
Yeah,
and get some feedback and give some feedback and ask for what they liked and what they didn't like, and what I can improve the next time. And I think that's always really interesting. And I do get the feeling that there's a lot of good things, and there's always a room for improvement. So that gives me a lot of energy, I think.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, you just mentioned Fridays for Future. So also here in Leipzig and of course worldwide, this was well, it still is. I mean, now it kind of slowed down a little because we're not allowed to go outside. But you're also pretty active in that group, right?
Yeah, I'm not too active, but I try to be there as often as I can, and every once in a while. And when I'm asked to support something, like to explain a bit about a bigger picture on the energy system or on research point of view for different topics, I try to help as much as I can. But it's wherever you go, it's always clear that it's the students who drive this. It's not parents or scientists or old people like us who are supposed to drive this. It's a student movement, and I think it's good this way.
Okay, but you still have the Parents for Future, Scientists for Futures, Entrepreneurs for Future. How do they interact with the original movement, the Fridays for Future kids and students?
For example, Scientists for Future, they meet once a month in person at the university in Leipzig.
Yeah,
I haven't been there for quite some time, I must admit, but I've been there a few times, and there you always have some representatives of Friday for Future as well. Yeah. And you have all the social media where you do have interaction.
Yeah.
And the same is true for Parents for Future.
Yeah. Okay. And the way I understand it, the students welcome these extra groups, Parents for Future, Scientists for Future, or how do they regard them, these extra groups?
I think they always like this. They of course for the cause, it's the best to have as many people in society as possible.
Yeah.
So this is why they like all the other movements. They specifically support Scientists for Future, also the other way around, and because that's their main claim, that politics should listen to the scientists. So of course scientists have a special meaning as far as I understand. But I think it's important that all groups, actually all different parts of society, support designing or finding a good future for all of us, and supporting this. And I think the only moments where they probably don't like it too much is if we put forward too strong opinions ourselves. Yeah. So one has to be really careful about what to say, because people are being watched very carefully. So I think there has to be some discussion to see what makes sense. And I think Fridays for Future is also doing this quite in an excellent manner. As far as I understand, they have weekly phone conferences like this one, just with 100 people.
Yeah.
and 100 parties. That's really crazy. So they've developed different skills how to actually agree to something. I think what they do is they do this to show that they support. So this is clapping
Yeah.
without any noise, and other hand signs and so forth, because if 100 people clap, I think it gets really loud.
Yeah.
So I think they're really clever. They learn a lot. They learn a lot of organizational skills. I think they learn a lot of skills that they will be able to use in their later professional life as well. So I think it's a really great movement.
Yeah. Yeah. Now with COVID-19, there's a lot of questions come up. Where's Greta now? Where's Fridays for Future now? So they keep working in the virtual room, as I understand.
Yes. So I think there was a very nice post of Greta Thunberg where she said that young people will also support the old people in regard that they stay at home and don't go for demonstration or on strike, but rather move to online approaches. And they have webinars now with highly qualified people and are in discussions. So I think they're really, really creative, and it can be very much appreciated.
So it sounds like the movement doesn't suffer from the COVID-19, let's say, break. You think they're gonna come back as strong as they were before?
I hope so. I think they have suffered before because they have seen that they've been out on the streets for a year, and they do have the feeling that they did not achieve what they seek to achieve, to have a plan on how to adapt to achieving our climate goals, how to adapt to the Paris Agreement. But one must say that they have achieved a lot. I think the discussion on climate change has been huge in the last year, and I think it still is. And I think the task is not over, so it's important to stay focused and stay with it, and keep taking the people out to the streets and raising the attention of everyone to discuss this further.
Yeah.
But of course, first we have to get through the COVID-19 crisis, and this is not over. And I think only once this is over, we can really judge what challenges are ahead of us. So we know that the climate challenge will not go away, but we must see how much we can focus on climate change again, and how much the discussion will go away from it into pure economic topics, for example. And I think there might be also personal issues. I mean, people dying is not exactly a nice thing to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's another interesting aspect, right? I mean, besides the social, personal tragedies we are facing now, the impact on the economy is will be pretty high, right? So, what's your guess? How would the politics in Germany or worldwide or different regions handle the situation once we are back, let's say, to hopefully normal conditions? Is the energy transformation then totally off the table because it's called to be too expensive? Focus on other subjects, or do you think we can switch back to where we were before?
So I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
We don't know how this will all turn out.
Yeah.
So let's hope it's not gonna be as bad as the worst scenarios might indicate. But yeah, this is something nobody can predict so far.
Yeah.
Let's keep our fingers crossed. But one thing is sure, that whatever it looks like afterwards, it's not like you can make any case that you should not do the energy transformation anymore. And it's just simply not right to claim that it's expensive. It is not. For example, our solar industry is the least costly way to provide electricity today, even in regions like Germany. So we must definitely move this further. And I think it's a huge opportunity for a lot of countries to get access to low-cost electricity and to even engage harder in this transformation than before.
Yeah.
But who knows what forces will try to make what case. But from my point of view, it's clear we must stay with it. We must stay with the energy transformation.
Okay. You just mentioned that the PV photovoltaics, the electricity from the sun is now one or the cheapest energy source. Can you add some figures? Do you have some comparison at hand?
So in Germany, I think a good way to look at it is the tenders for large utility PV systems,
Okay.
because they are fully transparent, and there you achieve numbers even below 4 cents per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
And that is for systems which are limited in size to 10 megawatts.
Mm-hmm.
And we have seen the first systems in Europe and also in Germany. I think EMBW now started to build their 150 or 170 megawatt solar power plant in Brandenburg. And I think the costs there are going to be even lower.
Yeah.
So this is really extraordinarily low. And if you look at coal industry, I think they have to pay almost this money for CO2 certificates without even paying for coal. So I think that's way more costly than photovoltaics electricity.
Okay. All right. So you just mentioned the 10 megawatt limit. Why is there what sort of limit is that?
I have no fucking idea. This is
Beep. Yeah.
Can I swear on your podcast? I really don't know. It's, I think, completely erratic, and it's there's no good reason for this number, and in no other electricity generation there is such a limit. So yeah, but I think it's not maybe too important. It's just a pain, but it's not stopping us, because we have to move to systems where we do not need any funding for these type of utilities, like we are seeing now with that large system in Brandenburg, where you can actually directly sell that electricity as well in the market or via power purchase agreements. I think there's a huge opportunity out there. I think we must rather support these type of business models with power purchase agreements, maybe loan guarantees until the banks actually believe that's a good idea, and do proper financing, and then I think this is the way to go. But it's really, that 10 megawatt limit is completely crazy.
Totally crazy. So you just mentioned the power purchase agreement. How does that work? I guess that's a deal between the owner of the solar park and a customer. Or
Yes.
how is it structured?
From my understanding, basically companies who use electricity are afraid of the cost of electricity rising.
Yeah.
Yes. And companies who try to sell electricity for whatever reason or for whatever source, but also from photovoltaics or wind energy, they are afraid of electricity costs dropping. Because, this would mean that they cannot get their loans paid. And it's basically some sort of an insurance. So both parties agree, well, let's have a fixed price. And if the price is higher, then we still meet at this intermediate price. And if it's lower, we do the same, or we reimburse each other if it's higher or lower. So we have a guaranteed price. And both of us can calculate with this number for the next 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
And this helps both sides, and I think that's a really good way forward.
Okay. No, PV plants are, of course, a fluctuating source of energy, right? So how is that taken into account in these PPAs? Is it what do you sell, a kilowatt hour at 12 o'clock lunchtime, or is it a kilowatt hours over cover the
I
whole
think
day, or how does it work?
there's different opportunities how to do this, but I guess it sells against the day ahead market price.
Yeah.
And of course, you can only sell the electricity if you got the electricity to sell. So it will be reference to the day ahead stock market price for electricity.
Okay. Yeah.
So you must have somebody who's actually trading there. So this could be large companies, or it can be an intermediate company who uses this as part of their portfolio for selling electricity.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, with a large utility company like BW, they can actually use that as part of their portfolio.
Yeah. So what is required that PPAs or any other, let's say, non-government supported scheme is necessary for solar energy? What are the steps that need to be taken
As far as
in
I
Germany or
understand,
any other country? Yeah.
as far as I understand, in other countries, this is far more developed, and this has to do with the German feed-in tariff, because we do have a feed-in tariff already. It was not so necessary to develop PPAs. Other countries without feed-in tariffs or reasonable feed-in tariffs developed this earlier, and I think they are further developed. But as far as I understand, really, we're very close to getting this. I think it's mostly almost like a marketing issues that you get this. Companies must know that there is this opportunity, and then they must use it. And maybe the only thing left there is you need to have financing from banks, and banks don't know this business yet, and they must get confidence that they get their credits repaid. And I think in order to get this confidence, it would be good, for example, for the German KfW Bank, the state-owned bank, to give such loan guarantees to support other banks to trust this type of business.
Okay.
And I think this is something which you only need to do for a fairly limited period in time. And once banks are used to the business and have achieved this trust, then you can let it go and let it be in the free market.
Okay. Excellent. Do you know countries where PPAs are already widely used?
As far as I understand, some of the Scandinavian countries do this.
Okay.
I visited a power plant in Spain, which a solar power plant, solar utility, which uses such PPAs. I think that in Southern Europe, obviously, the costs are even lower. So there you have a market coming up. I think Portugal, Spain, and Italy are markets which are being closely watched from companies, from system installers, to see what type of PPAs are possible there.
Okay, interesting. So, I mean, here in Saxony, Leipzig, we are in Leipzig, Saxony. Saxony has a lot of brown coal mining. As I stand on my terrace balcony and look towards the south, I can see a massive brown coal power plant creating nice clouds in the sky. So you can clearly see that this region massively depends on that kind of industry, or at least this is what is usually being told. So along with, let's say, trust in of banks in this kind of energy source, a lot more needs to be done, I would assume, to switch our energy supply system towards renewables. And I think this is one of your focus topics as a professor, right? So maybe you can shed some light of what else needs to be done to get to, say, let's say 25% renewables coverage across all energy demand, and or maybe 50, and then maybe 75%. So what would be the steps that need to be taken as from the industry, from policy, from all stakeholders?
So I think definitely all sectors must contribute to the energy system transformation.
Yeah.
It can not only be done by electricity, but at least electricity has to extend in other marketplaces, and we have to do the transition in all markets. What you see with the power plant south of Leipzig, it does two things. So one, it provides electricity, and I think that's fairly straightforward to change. So you need more renewable electricity instead.
Mm.
What's a different challenge is it provides heating for Leipzig with district heating.
Okay.
And that's, of course, something where we do have to make a transition. Leipzig has decided to not use this source anymore after 2023, I think. And we will try and hopefully make build a gas-fired a combined heating power plant to provide the heating, and then add more and more, for example, renewable sources or waste energy sources to such a system.
To cover the heat demand, the heating demand. That's for heating, or?
Yes.
Okay.
So to provide for district heating. I know that a nice example is in Hamburg. There have been two decisions by the citizens of Hamburg to actually rebuy their own power distribution company in the city and to move to renewable or CO2-free energy by 2030. And they also have district heating, which is a very technically effective and financially effective way of actually providing heat. It's district heating. I think people agree to this quite widely, but you have to do the transition. If you don't have a system yet for district heating, you have a large hurdle to overcome, a large initial investment to overcome this, that you must overcome. But there they use a lot of, they have heavy industry in Hamburg for steel and for aluminum, and they use the waste process energy from this and put it into the district heating. So there's different opportunities how to do this. But in general, I would say there's many opportunities, and you can be really creative, and there can be a lot of innovation in this, but there's some things which are certain. It is absolutely certain that we need more solar energy, we need more wind energy. It is clear that we will shift to electromobility. It's not clear whether it's going to be battery powered or fuel cell powered with hydrogen. That's maybe still an open race, but I'm almost certain it will be electric cars.
So electric cars, battery powered.
Battery or fuel cell with hydrogen.
Or fuel cell, all right.
Yeah. I tend more to battery, but I think that's still an open race, but it will be electric powered. Yeah. I don't think that it will be combustion engines in future anymore.
Yeah.
At least not in the small cars. And I think in heating, it will be clear that the technologies like heat pumps will get more importance. I think that thermal storage is something which has huge importance to shift energy around. So you can use, when you have excess energy, you can produce heat. And when you have limited electricity, you don't need to provide heat, but you have this in your thermal storage. I think that's a huge opportunity. And district heating, wherever you can do it. So there's certain technologies where almost everybody says that this plays an important role. So I think you must push those. And then I think it's fine to have an open market which sees competition, for example, between different storage opportunities, which gives the opportunity whether you expand your grid or you build local storage. I think there's very many different approaches to it. I think you must allow for innovation there. You must allow for information to be used, digitalization to help demand response, or this moving demand side management might be really interesting. And for example, like we see now, there is this big challenge, which is a real challenge, that at least in Germany, we have times where we don't have wind or solar. And almost every year we have like about a week with very little wind or solar energy. The question is where to get the energy from. And people claim that you need a whole, all the power plants still for this 1 week. but maybe it's also an opportunity to pay people to stay at home in this week and companies to close down. And now we see that, well, having 1 week a year to stay at home seems like child's play now. I'm home for 2 or 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks now. So I think it's not entirely impossible to do something like this. I think there's different opportunities. So there is things which are clear, and there's other things where we still have room to play, but we must push in all directions and see what's the best solution.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, let us briefly come back to the district heating. I don't know if that actually exists in other countries than Germany. So basically, you have a long pipes going over kilometers from the power plant towards individual households, right?
Yep.
If you use a gas power plant, that's still not renewable, right? So this would only be for a transition phase. So how would that look like in the, let's say, midterm, long-term future? How would you do? Would that also go to solar or wind? Electricity heating? Do you think the future of heating is also electricity?
So I think a gas power plant, and for example, the one we will hopefully build here in Leipzig, will have the capabilities to switch into hydrogen fired or synthetic fuel fired as well. Or you have biogas, which you can use. So there is renewable sources which can have a transition, or you can add more and more parts of this. So I think that's an opportunity, but there is also, I think, other ways to do this. I think with electricity, I think direct electric heating is a possibility, but also using heat pumps is always a possibility.
Yeah.
I think that it might be a good idea to lower the temperature in district heating. So now we have, I think in Leipzig, we get from the coal power plant, the water comes in at 130 degrees and it reaches Leipzig at 110 degrees. And I think you could lower such a temperature. And with a lower temperature, you can use solar thermal energy, for example. I think that goes up to 90 degrees or so.
Yeah.
In reasonable manner. And but you could also go much lower temperatures. So I've seen models with cold combined district heating where you go down to, for example, 30 degrees, but use heat pumps and use that 30-degree water to pump the heat up to whatever temperature you need, and lower the temperature down to, for example, 10 degrees. And then you have the opportunity to, for example, use that type of water for cooling computer centers, or where you have your large server farms, or so for IT cooling or other cooling requirements where you're at much lower temperature.
Yeah.
And use that as an energy source and feed it directly into your district heating. So I think that's a great opportunity.
Yeah.
But that's something which is not decided yet. I think that's some of the more fancy technologies which are possible.
Yeah. So what's the? I just read recently for 2019 the around 14 to 15% of the total energy demand. So that includes mobility and heating was covered by renewables, like 14 to 15%, right? Is it correct? Yeah.
I'm not quite sure, but sounds right.
Yeah. So what do you think in a realistic scenario? When can we get to 25%, 50 or 75%? And then is there scenarios by the policy makers or by the political parties? What are their scenarios they fight for?
Scientists, or I think Germany's Zero, for example, is they have scenarios how to do this quicker.
Yeah.
I like the scenario from Agora Energiewende, the big picture, which showed how we can transition 2030 to, I think the goal there is 65% renewables. So I think it's huge efforts we have to make by lowering our electricity consumption, for example, in the building sector, or energy consumption. and moving away from combustion cars like we have them today, and increasing the amount of electricity from renewables. So I think in order to keep our Paris climate goals, and in order to keep the global temperature below 1.5 degrees Celsius, we must reach zero CO2 emission by about 2035.
Zero by
Zero emission.
2035. Yeah.
So we must have huge parts of renewable electricity or renewable energy in Germany.
Yeah.
I think that's a really, really huge challenge. But at least we have to take on this challenge. So we have to increase the amount of photovoltaics and wind energy we set up very strongly. And
Yeah.
I think now both have difficulties. I think solar, as both of us have seen, has already had quite large challenges in Germany. And
Yeah.
I think wind is facing this now, or has started facing it last year. And I think that's the wrong way to go.
Yeah.
With this way, it will be impossible to reach our goals.
Yeah. And what about the financial demand? Can that be financed by the private industry? And would they invest into these energy sources because it gives them a high return on invest, or does it have to be like a state debt financed?
Yeah,
What do
so
you
I
think
think that's a big challenge for the energy transformation, that you have you move away from a OPEX-based energy system where a large portion of your cost is actually in the fuel you burn or use by whatever way,
Yeah.
to a system where most of your cost is actually in the investment, the CapEx. So you must invest into your system quite a lot of money, and then you have low rates to pay afterwards.
Yeah.
So that is a challenge. Fortunately, at least it was the case that the interest rates were low. So that really helped the case, and also the cost for capital intensive industries. So I think we should use that opportunity. It's hard for me to judge whether companies can do that themselves or whether the state must support this. I would hope that companies can do it, like what we said earlier with the power purchase agreements. And I think it should be possible that the government should design the market in a way that you can make good profits from it. I think it is a problem that with the rates you look at with solar, for example, you still have fairly long times until you get a return of your invest. So it's, I think, still around 10 years, depending on what type of system you look at. But I think that's quite long for your investment to pay back, and that's probably a challenge.
Yeah. Okay. And so recently in Germany, it's all dominated by legal boundary conditions, right? So if I understand correctly, there's a cap on the PV capacity which is allowed to be installed in Germany, which is I think 52 gigawatts.
Yes, that's right.
One thing, and the other one is now with only recently, I don't know if it was if the bill was passed that wind parks or windmills have to have a distance of at least 1 kilometer, which apparently reduces the potential for additional wind in Germany to close to zero. So is that correct? Is it a correct recollection?
I understand it the same way, yes.
Yeah.
So I think the 52 gigawatt cap for PV will go. Nobody's supporting this anymore. It's just they want to have this as part of the deal. So they will only negotiate once the wind topic is cleared. And I think for the wind topic, it's actually, so with the two government parties in Germany, one wants this 1,000 meter distance, minimum distance, and the other one wants to actually get to give money to the communities if they have a system close to their community. And I think the beauty is there is actually room for compromise. So you can have, for example, you could say that, okay, you can only install systems further than 1,000 meters away from a community. And if it's inside the system, then the community must be reimbursed. And then both would work out fine. And I think that then communities can say, okay, if I get this and that much money, I will think it's okay if we use this field over there and put some wind farms there. And you could even do a competition, like a tender, for how much money the communities would need. And the ones which would be willing to accept it for the lowest contribution would have a competition, and which a lot of politicians like, and the EU actually likes. And this way you would even find the lowest cost for putting up wind farms. So I think there's room for compromise, and I think that's always good.
Yeah.
But something needs to be done. I think the way they plan to do it now with just 1,000 meters from any house, that's just ridiculous in Germany.
Yeah. And I think the motivation was, I guess, disturbance by in German it's Schattenschlag. It's like the shade.
Infrasonic, whatever.
Even infrasonic noise.
There's different things, and yeah, I think you must respect this. Whatever the people say, but I think if you would only, if communities can say themselves, yes, we do want it, if we do get our share of the money which is earned there, and they do this, they agree to it themselves first, and they have to decide as a community whether they want it or not. I think that would increase the acceptance quite a lot.
Yeah. Okay. And the 52 gigawatt cap, is there I guess there's no scientific background for that or a reason for it for that cap, or do you?
I think I've seen
just a
it
safety
once.
stop. Yeah.
It's there is days in summer in the weekend where your maximum noon load is 52 gigawatts. That would mean in a sunny day, 52 gigawatts of solar could provide 100% of electricity. And the idea behind, it might be a coincidence, but I think that people might have looked at this to say that you do not overproduce just from solar.
Okay.
But it's, we need much higher numbers of photovoltaics in Germany. And if anybody looks around, there's still so many empty roofs. It's really amazing. You must get photovoltaics on all these roofs.
Yeah. So we now have almost 52 gigawatts in Germany. What does a cost-optimized system look like in Germany? How much PV would we have?
I think there's actually multiple answers. So that's also what I learned, for example, from colleagues from Fraunhofer CSP who do this in a very nice numerical simulation optimization with solvers to find out which is the optimum system. And they find that there is different optima with very, very close overall cost, but very different systems. Yes, so the cost can be really just portions of cents apart from one another per kilowatt hour, but or fractions of cents, but the system is entirely different. So you might have, for example, what I remember, there are systems which do use solar thermal energy, and some which don't at all.
Yeah.
And the cost difference is not too large.
Yeah.
So, and I think with the uncertainty on how the prices develop, I think there's still room to find out what's the optimum solution. But for sure, it will have a lot of photovoltaics and a lot of wind energy.
Okay. So do you remember one of the a figure, like now it's 52 gigawatts, one of those scenarios? What How much PV would there be in Germany for 100% renewables? 100 or 150 or 500?
So definitely above 150.
Okay.
It really depends on what you try to achieve. So if you, for example, if you, in our lecture, if we do these simulations and we do the energy transformation, and you can see that the overall primary energy needed is always being reduced because a lot of the technologies are more efficient. Like electromobility is much more efficient than combustion engines, or heat pumps are much more efficient than burning fuels for heating. So you will always lower the primary electricity or energy demand. But there's one technology which doesn't do this, and this is water electrolysis for producing hydrogen. This is much less efficient. So in order, if you start using this as a storage, as a yearly storage, then really your power requirements explode. And if you look at, I think Fraunhofer has just published a study, a hydrogen strategy for Germany. And there they claim that just electrolyzers will need between 50 and 80 gigawatts of power.
Continuous.
That's the installed capacity, and depends whether you if it's run continuous or at least in a lot of hours, it's only then it's cost effective. But this means 80 gigawatts is the peak load at the moment in Germany. So it means doubling the electricity load just by adding electrolysis and
hydrogen.
Hydrogen, that's a lot. But if you, for example, say, well, we import this hydrogen from somewhere else, like Morocco or wherever, that's like importing oil and gas today. And that changes, of course, the requirements on how much wind or solar you would need here. So that really is a huge factor in talking about how much photovoltaics or wind energy you need here in total. So I think that if you go between 200 and 400 gigawatts of photovoltaic, you can make for a nice energy system, and you can import the rest via hydrogen. If you would say that you have to do everything 100% energy inside of Germany, then you have to go way over such figures. And I think that's not realistic.
That's not realistic, you mean?
So I think that the last 10 to 15% in the energy system, that's really where it's getting tough. And if you can get that from somewhere else, that would be beneficial for us.
Yeah. So your personal favorite, gut feel, a lot of gut feel, of course. How would our energy system look like in the future? Yes, if you had to decide now.
I think we have to carefully design on how much more wind energy we can accept and how to increase that acceptance. I think wind energy, wind and solar,
the public acceptance. You mean?
Yes.
The public acceptance.
Yes, and I think there's a price tag to that acceptance. I think you're willing to accept much more if you get more money for it. That's the way just we are. It's I don't want to say anything bad with that. I think that's the way it goes. And I think that's fine. And then you don't have to overdo it. But I think there's still some room and there is opportunities. I think photovoltaics, we have to basically see on every house roof. Especially if you look at commercial rooftops, you must integrate photovoltaics everywhere. And then we have to see how much we can get into our countryside as well. I think there's plenty of room. There's plenty of opportunity to do this. And I think in general, also for research, the acceptance topic is very nice, and talking about how to design a system that people will think it looks nice is also possible. Like I think in a field, a solar system can look nice, or you can try and hide it if you don't want to see it. Or today we have bifacial solar modules which you can put vertically, which look different. And I think you should take into account how they also look like and how it's accepted by the population, which has to see it every day.
Cool. All right. So after all these years, you're still optimistic that what mankind or will make it possible?
I don't know. I also don't know how much we should be afraid. That's really something where I'm completely not sure. I was recently asked by someone whether I really think that in 30 years' time we will not be able to sit down and have a drink together. I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably we can. I don't know what the circumstances will be. Will the
Yeah.
world look like Mad Max? I don't know.
Yeah.
Do they have drinks at Mad Max? I guess so. I don't know how bad it's really going to get.
Yeah.
And but you must stay optimistic to survive. I think there's no point in saying, well, it's not going to work anyhow. And I actually think that it's not like a digital thing. It's not like either we make it or we don't. I think it's even if we don't meet the 1.5 degree goals, and maybe if we go over all the tipping points, I think it's still worthwhile to have energy security from renewable, decentralized sources. So I think we must push this way.
Yeah.
There's no other way.
There's no other way. All right. So, so basically, my last question. So, what's the one thing you think the solar industry needs to get to the next level?
I think we're doing great already. I have recently said in an interview that I think my single biggest misunderstanding was that we need thin film photovoltaics in order to ever be competitive with photovoltaics.
I was in that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you thought so too. I thought we needed one revolution in order to get there. And boy, have a look what evolution has done for us. Like the silicon photovoltaics people say, I don't know who of them invented it, but it might have been Dick Swanson, that silicon technology is the dinosaur of solar technologies, and that dinosaur is still hungry. And I think that's just true. It's really amazing what the evolution of silicon photovoltaics has done and how much they've driven down the cost. And it's really great work of all the people involved. And you can just be grateful to all of them who've driven this and acknowledge their great work. And I think I just keep going and keep pushing. And I think solar is such a big business already. It's really crazy. I've just looked at numbers on the employment of in photovoltaics in Germany and other countries, and I think we have an average of around 400 employees out of 1 million are in photovoltaics now worldwide.
Worldwide, okay.
That's crazy. Germany is now below the average, by the way, but that's a different story. China is 3 to 4 times the average, so that's the big player there. But it's really amazing how many people work in this field, and it's just a great opportunity. And a lot of things are happening there, and I don't believe in the revolution in photovoltaics anymore. I don't think it's necessary. It will be very interesting to see whether we need tandem cells, but I think only the standard technology will make it there. But that will be interesting too. We see how it's going to work. You're an expert in tandem cells, so that will be good for you, and you have the meteorology to look at it. Great stuff.
Yeah, excellent. All right, Jens. Well, thanks a lot for taking time today. Must be an hour or so.
You said we're going to talk 15 minutes.
Sorry?
You said we're going to talk 15 minutes.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. It was always, you talked all the time, right?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And your kids behaved quite well. Once in a while, I wasn't sure if it was my kids or yours. I heard in the background.
I heard mine.
You heard yours, yeah.
Yeah.
On the outside in your garden, yeah. Yeah, but it all worked well. Hey, thanks a lot.
Thanks,
and
Torsten.
yeah, I mean, we were supposed to meet again for our every 7th week solar beer here in Leipzig. I guess this will also be a virtual meeting, I assume, right?
I've done one before now, and it actually works quite fine.
Yeah. All right.
It's nicer in person, but
It's
it
nice
works
in
as well.
person, yeah. But yeah, the beer is cheap at home. That's an
Yeah,
advantage.
definitely.
All right, let's struggle
All
to
right.
get home. Hey,
Okay.
thanks a lot, Jens, and talk to you soon.
Thanks, Torsten. And I'm
Yeah.
curious to see if anybody's going to watch it till this point.
Yeah.
All right.
We had
Thank
fun.
you, Torsten. We had
All
fun.
right.
It was great talking to you. See you
Yeah.
soon.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.